vantaggio e in forza delle quali sfrutta le risorse di questa nazione. Questo è un bambino che lavora in una miniera d'oro in Burkina Faso. Il Burkina Faso è una delle nazioni più povere del mondo. Per il Burkina Faso, che ha l'oro, la Francia stampa moneta coloniale. In cambio pretende che finiscano nelle casse del tesoro francese il 50% di tutto quello che il Burkina Faso esporta. L'oro che questo bambino si infila in un cunicolo per tirare fuori finisce per lo più nelle casse dello Stato francese. Allora la soluzione non è prendere gli africani e spostarli in Europa. La soluzione è liberare l'Africa da certi europei che la sfruttano e consentire a queste persone di vivere di quello che è.
A lot of people believe that Africa is poorly represented and badly underestimated. Beyond the vast opportunity manifest in African markets, we highlight people who make a difference, leaders turning to the tide, youth driving change, and an indefatigable business community. That is what we believe will change the continent, and that is what we report on. With hard-hitting investigations, innovative analysis, and deep dives into countries and sectors, the Africa Report delivers the insight you need. France has halted its colonization policy in Africa, but its economic colonization of these African states persists. When will it stop? A portion of the colonies' budget continues to flow to the French central bank, under various names and categories. This process allows France to appropriate about 85% of the former colonies' annual income. 14 former French colonies in Africa pay colonial tax amounting to about $500 billion. These countries are Benin, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon. These countries have a combined population of 174 million. And a nominal total GDP of 196 billion, with a purchasing power parity GDP of 411 billion. France has halted its colonization policy, but its economic colonization of these African nations persists. A great portion of the colony's budget continues to flow to the French central bank, under various names and categories. This process allows France to appropriate about 85% of the former colony's annual income. As a result, African countries face financial difficulties and have to borrow back their own money from the French central bank as debts. To reclaim their funds, African countries are limited to applying for no more than 20% of the transferred amount. If they seek a larger amount, it can be vetoed. France argues that it is the money it spent on buildings and infrastructure constructed more than a century ago. Any refusal by an African ruler to pay the colonial tax often leads to a coup. Please, are you following what I'm saying? Let us continue, please. Since the coup in Niger took place, many Western and African countries started to voice their concerns regarding uranium and other resources imported from Niger, airspace closure and elongated fly time to and from some countries in different parts of Africa, threat of a second Great War in Africa, and determination of the situation regarding terrorism. Another concern is about the oil and gas pipeline projects that cross the Nigerian territory or start there. These are the Niger-Benin oil pipeline, the Niger-Chad oil pipeline that connects to the Chad-Cameroon pipeline, and Trans-Saharan gas pipeline. Economic Community of West African States and Western nations were the first to voice their concerns about the fate of these projects. But, just as is the case with uranium, which continues to be exported from Niger and companies like Orano proceed with their work in the Republic, the situation with pipelines remains the same no matter the coup. With the Niger-Benin pipeline, everything is clear. The Benin government self-said, Niger-Benin oil pipeline is not affected by sanctions, the project was not abandoned and is still under construction. The most recent news indicates that the pipeline is 75% complete and should be finalized as soon as possible. The situation with Niger-Chad and Trans-Saharan pipelines is different. Some Western outlets said these projects are under threat of being cancelled. Which is odd, because even before the coup, the fate of these projects was a mystery. Interesting. The Niger-Chad pipeline is presumed to be shelved because there has been no news since 2019. In 2019, Chad authorities said, the project was probably stopped in favor of the Niger-Benin pipeline. The official explanation given for the cancellation was concerns about attacks from groups like Boko Haram. The idea of the Trans-Saharan pipeline was first proposed in the 1970s, the latest news from 2022 regarding the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between Nigeria, Niger, and Algeria. So, the project was quite vague even before the coup, and there is no confirmation of it being cancelled. Algeria opposed the intervention. By the way, Algeria is not a member of ECOWAS, but the country's president stressed that without Algeria there will be no solution because it shares 1,000 kilometers border with Niger and would be the main victim in the event of a military operation. ECOWAS has since opted for a diplomatic solution. The president of neighboring Nigeria advocated for the invasion, but was unable to get permission from his Senate, who recommended that he first consider other options. Mali and Burkina Faso, whose membership in ECOWAS was suspended because of the coups in those countries, warned that they would regard as invasion of Niger as an attack on themselves. These cooled Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire a little, which had expressed their readiness to send soldiers to Niger. France suspended financial aid to Burkina Faso because the country supported rebels in Niger. The French Foreign Ministry announced its support for Economic Community of West African States to restore Bazoum. Acting Secretary of State and Under-Secretary for Political Affairs Victoria Nolan's visit to Niger ended in failure. She employed various tactics including appeals and promises, but primarily threats. These threats revolved around potential Russian influence, economic blockades, reduced financial assistance, and even the prospect of military intervention to topple the new government. Lessons from Mali and Central African Republic show that Africans find it more beneficial to work with new partners such as the BRICS group of states. These partners refrain from interfering in internal politics and adhere to pre-established agreements. Africa seeks allies and collaborators, not dominators. Africans no longer view Europe and the United States as beacons of hope. Fear and subservience have dissipated. One certainty is that the next world war shall be an energy war, and Africa will beat the center on it. Energy and the role of foreign banks is the source of instability in Africa. Monetary control by the banks of the United Kingdom and France also a cause of instability in the Sahel. The main point is that Africa cannot prosper without proper control of their own money creation process. Most of the African elite's assets are stored foreign banks. All the help that is provided by the West goes to the elite's F countries. And then they store this money in Western banks. As a result, foreign countries have gained control over our economies and over our natural resources because help never goes unpaid, while the general population in the Sahel remain poor. In the case of Niger, France gets 95% of the revenue for uranium, and only 5% goes to the government of Niger. One by one, African countries are leaving France. One by one, African countries are waking up. The idea of getting rid of oppressive colonial weight is now. France will not be able to function economically once these countries abandon France. Please may I ask you to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for your support. Catch you in the next one.